Blasters have probably had the weirdest history out of any weapon class in Splatoon. In the first game, they were so broken they could one-shot with an indirect, and yes, this is real, I swear I'm not making this one up. Anyway, even after that was taken away, they still ended up being incredibly strong weapons, especially the Range Blaster and Luna Blaster at the end of Splatoon 1's life. Splatoon 2 gave all of the strong blasters some reasonable nerfs, but then they also did this. They legit became the worst weapon class in Splatoon 2, and it wasn't even close, with only the rapid blasters being good at the end of the game's lifespan. And now, we're here with Splatoon 3, and we've seen a bit of a resurgence in blasters, so today I want to talk about that, and if they really are good now, or if they're just a bit overrated. If you enjoyed, be sure to subscribe, and let's get right into it. So first up, let's go over all the positive changes blasters got going into Splatoon 3, the first of which being Squid Roll. Blasters, even the rapid and clash, are generally slower than other things like shooters and dualies, and so having a brand new movement option that allows them to go a sizable distance is really useful for them while firing. This also comes with a bit of added HP, which can be useful in some situations, and gives them a way out if they're trapped by something like a spot bomb, which is especially useful for Range Blaster. In general, the ability to move while you fire is an incredibly important aspect in the Splatoon series, and with each game, it's only become more important, and blasters could not do that in Splatoon 2 due to the horrid jump accuracy and, well, no other options. Another positive change is the removal of something that was in Splatoon 1 and 2, chainable HP specials. While Bubbler in Splatoon 1 wasn't as bad because it wasn't global range and, well, everyone just kinda lost to Bubble, Ink Armor was in particular horrible for blasters. It basically prevented you from one-shot directing anyone, and even your indirect kill time was incredibly slow. Because this also got chained across the entire map, it was super valuable for team fights, and in competitive play you almost always saw it, especially at the end of the game's lifespan. This basically meant that teams would play around their specials, so when they didn't have it, they wouldn't fight you, and you wouldn't be able to get much picks, and then when they did, you literally couldn't fight them, which was not pleasant to play. While we're on the note of specials, there's more fightable specials in general for that game. Ink Armor being chained to things meant that almost nothing, even some specials like Inkjet that were somewhat good for blasters to fight, were really fightable. And in general, a lot of the specials just kind of force you to move, and you couldn't really do anything about that. Basically, in Splatoon 2, Range Blaster couldn't really fight or have any noticeable value against specials, and in Splatoon 3, that's changed with multiple specials that blasters actually quite valuable at fighting over other options. This can include some returning specials like Inkjet, but more importantly include a lot of the new ones, such as the Crab Tank and Ink Vacuum, which are mostly vulnerable from the sides and back rather than in the front. This means that having a weapon with AoE is actually much more useful at fighting specials, and because coordinating your specials is still very important, that matters a lot. It's also worth noting that some specials are still very good at countering blasters. Missiles gives it away and forces it to move, which is harder for the slow weapons, and there is still a fair bit of HP specials like the Big Bubbler and Booyah Bomb that do not have an easy way to break around it and are very good against this class. But it's still less of them overall, which means for the majority of comps you're fighting, there will be less things that counter blasters than there was in Splatoon 2. And finally, and most importantly, intensify action up. This is a brand new ability that influences the Squid Roll and Surge, two things that are already helpful for blasters, but even more importantly helps with jump accuracy and Squid Roll accuracy. This means that with some gear investment I'll talk about later, you can actually have incredibly reliable jumps and Squid Roll shots, which means you can actually move and shoot reliably. This is a huge deal for blasters, as it means they can keep up a bit better with faster paced weapons, have an easier time spacing, and can hit a bit further than before. It's so incredibly helpful and something they have desperately needed. So that all sounds really good, so let's also talk about the problems. Blasters are still slow, they still do not paint, and they still do not get a high special output. This means that they are going to be very comp dependent, they still are completely terrible when you're absolutely locked out of the map, and they can be punished by faster weapons that are able to close the gap, or longer distance weapons like chargers that can more easily punish them for their speed. However, blasters have a brand new weakness in this game that they never had in the previous ones: gear dependency. Intensify action, while amazing for it, has its own separate curve with blasters due to how good it is on it, meaning you need around 2 to 3 mains of Intensify for it to be really noticeable. In the previous two games, blasters commonly ran a lot of quick respawn to make getting punished a little bit less bad, and now with the amount of Intensify you need, you can't really run anywhere near as much, if at all in some cases. This means being aggressive with blasters is by far harder than it's been in previous games, because if you die and get punished, punished for it, you don't come back as fast. I'll say I like this change, honestly. I think jump accuracy was something Nintendo was very scared to do with blasters, and having it be that you can get that but at the cost of some of your gear feels like a reasonable trade-off. So before I conclude the class as a whole, let me very briefly go over each individual blaster and my thoughts on them, since the kit can matter a lot. Keep in mind this is for the version the game is at when it came out, and balance patches will change this with time. Luna Blaster is much better at close range without the lack of ink armor, but does still really struggle to get in. Splat Bomb is very nice for it for poking at a distance and comboing with a team, and Zipcaster is pretty useful as it can play some interesting angles, and it of course gives it a lot of mobility that it doesn't normally have. Zipcaster is a mixed bag. It's not the strongest special right now, but it's not bad either, and that's also how I feel about its synergy with Luna Blaster. It gives the weapon some much needed mobility, and it could use it to go for picks, but due to the lack of range it only has a few angles it can play, and its Zipcasts are quite predictable, which means it's fine for it, but not amazing. In general, this is good for smaller maps and tower control, which puts it in about a mid-tier spot. Normal Blaster is a weird combination of the custom kits from Splatoon 1 and 2. I like Autobomb on it as it's fairly cheap, good for poking, and can slightly help to farm its special, but it's not as good at that as the other bombs, which means it struggles a bit more with special output. Compared to the other blasters, this also has pretty low lag, meaning you don't need to rely on jumping and squid rolling as much, so maybe we'll see more quick respawn and less intensify here, it's hard to say though. Big Bubbler is really interesting for it because the main mode for this is tower control, which really solidifies this as being really good on TC, but in general this is a stronger special and very good for Blaster since it allows it to set up without getting punished. That being said, you have to actually get in to set up the Big Bubble in good spots, which is hard for the weapon, though it just really means it's more comp dependent than usual. I think this is more on the higher tier end. Before I fully cover Range Blaster, I did a video about my hopes and expectations for the weapon before the game came out, and I want to see what I got right. There was a fun kit in one of the styles so far, there is minimal RNG on Squid Roll and Surge if you use Intensify, and no chainable HP special. For extra stuff I wanted, none of my ideal kits happened so far, but maybe that can happen in the future. I also wanted Heavyweight, as I think perfect accuracy was really extreme and it needed some gear dependency, but Intensify action kinda introduces that dynamic anyway, so not really needed now. Anyway, Range Blaster is the most comp dependent one out of all of them, due to the fact that it's a 200p special weapon and it's even slower than the others, which makes it really terrible in those situations. Suction Bomb requires one sub of main and sub saber to get 3 shots after it, which is a little bit annoying, and it has high whiting frames, which in combination with the main weapon means it has a lot of downtime, but it is still very good for poking and farming a special. Wavebreaker is really cool for it. It's definitely a more supportive style, but it has amazing combos with the 45 damage, allowing you to easily combo with an indirect hit, and if they jump, direct hits are a lot easier to hit, or indirects can trap opponents. The location effect is also particularly useful for this weapon since, you know, it hits behind cover. I think this weapon as a whole and Wavebreaker are pretty underrated, and it's going to take a long time to optimize them, even for me, because I think squid rolling is incredibly important for this weapon, and I'm just not really doing that too much in a higher level competitive setting yet. With that being said, I think it's on the higher end of high tier, which is pretty good for this weapon. Alright, now we got the more rapid fire blasters, starting with Clash. I've talked about this weapon and its strengths and weaknesses a bit more in my best and worst of every weapon videos, so I won't give the TLDR here, but yeah, this weapon isn't actually as good as people might think it is when you're just starting the game. Realistically, its kit makes it okay at dealing with longer range threats if it can get Zuka enough, and it's good for some specific maps where the blast radius is useful, but if you don't have cover, you just cannot kill things quick enough. This would be sort of like Luna, where it's a niche on tower control and specific maps, but only on more specific stages, and arguably even more comp dependent, so I'd say this is probably in the lower part of mid-tier. Rapid Blaster's kit confuses me because it's 200p on a weapon with Ink Mine that struggles to get in, which makes its disadvantage state unusually horrible, and because it's a Rapid Blaster, it's not as kill heavy, and its special nor sub-weapon allow it to be very aggressive, so what was the plan here? The kit makes it so it's not as good to run with an anchor weapon, like a Charger, because they also have similar weaknesses, but it's also on the normal Rapid and not the more defensive Rapid Pro. Rapid's still a solid main weapon in this game, and even without ink armor to break, is a bit less susceptible to the common weaknesses of blasters than the normal one-shot ones I covered previously. I guess it's a mid-tier that works if you have certain comps, but it just feels really awkward even if you are doing its optimal comp, and I really don't like how this functions. Maybe a lower points for special could help out, I guess. Finally is Rapid Pro. For whatever reason, this one is the cheaper points for special at 20 cheaper, despite having Toxic Mist, which while not a great re-entry sub and not one that helps farm its special, is definitely much better for it than Ink Mine on defense, where you place it at your feet that no one runs at. I really like Ink Vacuum with it. It lets it be more aggressive, protect its team, and in general fits the role super well. And the main weapon of Rapid Pro seems a little bit better than Rapid since it can more easily poke backline weapons, and I just tend to like it a little bit more right now, despite my personal preference for the smaller one. I think in general, the long Rapid is better for more supportive and defensive kits, and this one fits perfectly with it while giving it even more versatility. This is definitely a high and potentially top tier option in the future. To conclude, conclude, in solo queue and lower level plays, blasters are incredibly strong. However, once you get to higher ranks and especially competitive play, they're only around mid to high tier, which to be fair is still a very solid spot. While I wouldn't consider any of them top tier, I think that's honestly fine. Most of the blasters here can work at the highest level of play if you really dedicate your time to them and are willing to build comps around them, which feels fair. It would be really extreme if blasters were good enough to be a meta pick on every single map and mode with the extreme weaknesses and strengths they have, and I think this spot feels pretty balanced overall. On top of that, this class definitely has the Splatoon 3 effect, where they just feel better to play than ever. They might not be as strong as they were in Splatoon 1, but they feel better to play than that game, and that goes true for a lot of weapons in this game just because of how well it's designed. To me, range and all the other blasters have never felt better, and I'm really happy with the changes. I had really little faith going into Splatoon 3 before we really learned everything, and I'm incredibly happy to be proven wrong. But what do you guys think? Let me know your opinion on blasters in the comments, and I'll see you guys in another video.